Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 133. We are joined today by a really special guest who I will introduce you to in a minute. I think I mentioned at the end of last episode who it was going to be and what it was roughly about, but I will do that in a second. I'll introduce you to him just in case you by any chance missed last episode, which hopefully you didn't. But we will introduce you to the regular hosts to begin with. Mr. Peter Lant, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Just been out for a wander. No boy today. He's at doggy daycare. Had to switch the days around. But I went out for a walk anyway.
It's a gorgeous day here in
Fantastic.
Essex anyway. It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, hopefully it's nice where you are in Bath, Pete.
Absolutely. Went out and caught some rays.
Good.
So all sorted.
Good, excellent. And Mr. Paul Bassett, how are you? Full of the joys of spring?
Is it spring yet?
Yeah, it feels like it.
We're still in winter, aren't we? Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
We've just been seeing what a glorious day outside it is. It's sunny. There's daffodils and crocuses everywhere.
It feels like
that.
spring.
It's March,
It
and
feels
then
like
you come
spring.
and bring us back into winter. Come
Well,
on.
you might be the Sound of Music. I'm more like Darren Aronofsky. You know, just something kind of.
What, the whale?
Yeah. Think. Yeah, I'm your yin to your yang.
Okay, good. Right, okay. The guest we have with us this week is Olly Loom. We'll just quickly say hello to Olly. Olly, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Well, I went and watched. Olly is a filmmaker who has recently finished a film called The Summit Mentality, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And there was a screening of this. It's about a 1 hour documentary. I won't give too much away. I want Olly to kind of explain how it came about and what it's about, really. But I went to watch it last weekend. I took a member of the gym, Mr. Kevin Atwell, with me. It was a sold out screening at the cinema. It was a really powerful film, really beautifully shot. Really, the messages in it were great. Very, very inspiring. And I wanted to get Olly on, obviously, to talk about the film and kind of some of the themes around it and recording it and filming it and what it was like. And also there's a charity that the screenings were raising some money for as well, which was a really, really good, worthwhile charity, which maybe we can touch on as well. So Olly, what is the Summit Mentality? How did it come about? How did you get involved in it? How did you come up with the name? What is it? All the rest of it. Over to you.
You're not meant to ask all the questions in one go, you know. You can ask them you can dribble them in.
Right,
I'll
see how I get on with.
Over to you. No, that's something to get you started, and we'll, like I say, we'll dip in and out and ask questions as we go, I'm sure. But what is the Summit Mentality and what is it about?
Yeah, sure. So in the summer of last year, 3 guys took on the Snowdon 24, which was a race it still is a race. There's another one coming up this year. It's a 24-hour relay race at Mount Snowdon in Wales. So I think they were aiming to do it was under 2.5 hour legs to the summit and down again. And they were aiming to do it 10 times. And essentially they basically got in contact with me and just said, you know, we're doing this massive challenge. Do you want to film it? And at first I thought it was going to be maybe like a 20-minute YouTube video. I thought, that sounds cool. I like these boys. So it's Ted, Travis and Joe, and Ted and Travis I went to school with. I didn't know them in school, but through a couple of other bits that I've done with them over the last couple of years, I got to know them. And Joe I met through the production. And I lost my train of thought now.
No, that's okay. No, so they got in touch with you about trying to.
Yeah. So at first I thought it was going to be just like a 20-minute video. And it was through, I think it was through the charity and what the film was about, we realized that it had a lot more potential to be something a bit longer. So I didn't know how long it was going to be until it was done, essentially. And it came out at an hour in length. And I'm very cautious of retention. Like, I don't want to waste anyone's time with something that I make. I want to make something that's good and that keeps your interest throughout the whole thing. So I thought, I'll make something, I'll make it 20 minutes, nice and concise, loads of stuff, make it choppy. But when it came to editing the film, there was a lot of scenes that actually felt like they worked and then moved into the next one. And it felt like it was paced nicely enough to be a feature, which, like, if I sat down to make my feature, I feel like I would, sat down to make a feature, I feel like I'd overcomplicate it. But it's nice, like, for a filmmaker to have a feature made, like that's a big thing for me, and for it to have come organically, like, that's really cool as well. So yeah, it came from them basically just reaching out to me and saying, look, we're doing this challenge. And the first thing that you do when you're making a documentary is you sit down and you just film an interview, and you just talk about the challenge you're doing and why you're doing it, a little bit about your background. And because the boys were doing it for Sport in Mind, we wanted to do a little bit of a almost like a promo to say, you know, we're raising money for Sport in Mind, please donate. And it was through filming those sort of interviews that we started talking about the reasons why they're taking on the event, and they started looking back at their own mental health journeys and how sport has helped with that. And like those interviews that made it into the film, like we filmed maybe like 4 or 5 interviews per person with to make the film, but a lot of what I actually used was from that initial interview, just because like they were thinking for themselves about like, why do I want to do this challenge? And it was quite nice to see them thinking in the moment, like, why do I want to do this? I know I want to do it, but what is it that makes me feel like I want to take on this big silly challenge? And so yeah, that's when we started talking about sport and mental health, and I learned a little bit about each of the boys, and that, yeah, kind of just rolled from there.
Because I think when people watch the film, it's that's really powerful, where you've got the 3 of them, and you kind of almost focus a little bit on each one, and then they're telling their story. And I think it was it's Joe whose grandfather died, wasn't it? I think of cancer and things, and he was talking about how that affected him, and then he was very, very close to him. And it was really lovely how you kind of had the interviews with them, kind of almost, you know, talking heads with I think it was like a black screen behind, and then you kind of got back into the kind of the action, if you like, of the actual race and what was going on, and then you'd come out and talk about something else and go back to them. It was really good. So I mean, that the actual event, I mean, it was almost like it's a brilliant film, you know, as a standalone thing. But I think it really, and that was the first year they'd done that, the Snowdon 24, wasn't it? You said it was the
first event.
It was a great sort of promo as well for that event, and I suppose for Snowdon, and for I think speaking to a number of people afterwards, I think it's a really inspiring kind of film, and it makes people think. I mean, I know Pete does a lot of walking and does a lot of kind of with his dog.
I was up Snowdon last year.
Yeah.
Like round about the same time. I wasn't going up and down it. I went up it early because it was hot.
Yeah. But no, it was great. It really kind of made you feel like you wanted to get up and do something, you know, yourself while you watched it, which was brilliant. In terms of like the guys thing, because I think you said though that some of them didn't really even know each other. They'd only met a couple of times before they actually did the event. So how did that happen? How did they kind of get together, get introduced? How did those 3 get put together to do this challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. So Travis is who I kind of knew the best, and a few years ago he was kind of making his own. He was basically trying to make his own sort of Gymshark gymwear brand, and he spoke to me about doing some filming in the Peak District, and I filmed Ted. So those 2 knew each other through making that video and that little trip we did in the Peak District for a weekend. So they've kind of known each other since then, but they weren't like particularly like close friends or anything. And then Joe met Ted through a friend of a friend. And I think they literally I think Ted might have even just put it up on his like Instagram story or something saying, does anyone want to do this challenge? And he came back to him. But yeah, and then the documentary just sort of formed from there, really. They were just like, oh, maybe we should get someone to film it. But yeah, and it was a case of like through the filming, and obviously everyone's being very like open with their emotions, with their talking about mental health and stuff. Everyone just glued together really quickly. Everyone got to know each other really quickly. So it did feel, it was great. It felt like a little holiday that we'd gone on, because we went up there on the Thursday, and you know, you had all the anticipation for the event, and then I think we had a day afterwards as well. So it did feel like a lad's holiday almost.
I was going to say, it felt like a holiday for you because you were filming it. They were
yeah,
I'm sure
it didn't look like a holiday. No, it's great because that's the thing. I was so surprised because at the end of the screening, because obviously you were there, and then the three lads were there as well, and then you all got up at the front, and you know, round of applause, and kind of there was not a Q&A, but you know, each sort of had said a few words, you know, at the end of it. And I was so surprised that because the three of them, they seemed like almost like brothers, that they probably, I felt like they'd probably gone through school together, and they'd, you know, and now they're all, are they all in their 20s, I'd imagine, or?
Yeah.
You know, and I sort of felt like they'd probably known each other most of their lives, because they seemed so close in the film. And when you kind of said that this, and I think Joe said at the end that event, really, that kind of shared experience of that event, they almost feel like brothers now, you know, because they've been through that together. Because it was fantastic, you know. And some of the stuff where they were obviously 24 hours, I don't want to kind of give away too much, but when they were doing it, obviously 24 hours, so they're doing it through the night, pitch black, and the stuff in the day is lovely. But then when they're going up on their own with just like the head torch, and I presume they're recording it on some kind of GoPro or some kind of camera that's attached to them, and you just see how lonely and dark, and you know, there's just nothing to see, and you know, totally on their own. It looked really, really horrible, you know, really challenging. Yeah,
and it was like, obviously all of the GoPro footage that I watched all of it, and
you watched like 24 hours worth of
so it was like, it was, I felt like I went through it with them. Obviously I didn't take on the challenge, but you know, I saw every kind of emotion through them doing it. So,
and that's how I think I felt when I was watching it as well, because you really did, through that GoPro stuff, and they're kind of almost just talking to themselves at times, and they're just trying to get themselves through it. But because you're just seeing obviously from their point of view, and you can hear them breathing, and you can see them passing people. And there was one, I can't remember which one it was, but he was coming back down, and he was crying, you know. Ted, was that Ted? Yeah. And Ted was like the you know, the kind of most accomplished runner, wasn't he? He was sort of like a really good like runner, and he was coming down, I think maybe after his second or third time, and he was, you know, just cry. You could hear him just sobbing on the way down, and he's just all on his own, and it was obviously not set up at all, because he's just doing it, you know, and he's got the camera there. But it was really, really sort of heartfelt and things.
Yeah, I mean, as a filmmaker as well, like I couldn't believe my luck almost that scene was in there.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll describe it a little bit, but basically they get to, so there's different stages of the Snowdon. It was the Clanberis path that they did, and it's almost like a walk to a steep bit basically, and the steep bit is where you're actually kind of going up to the summit. And he just got maybe halfway up the steep bit onto a part where I think we called it the shingles, but it's just loads of loose rocks, and it's quite difficult to get around. You're not going straight, you're going around stuff, and you're slipping and all the rest of it. And he'd started to cramp at this point. And the scene plays out with just solely on the GoPro footage, so we're at his point of view. But luckily, the sun was setting right behind him, so you can just see his shadow on the floor. So there's a focus point in the image, so you can still see him even though you're at his point of view. and you just follow him through it. And I'm really proud of how that scene came together. I couldn't believe my luck when I looked through it, and then to see that sequence in the lead up to him then coming down, which is when he has the outburst of emotions, and then where that came in the film as well, it just it worked really, really well. So I'm really pleased how that's going to go.
I find this fascinating because I've not done like a challenge like that, but I did the fan dance a few years ago over Penny Van in South Wales, carrying a pack, and I did that at night as well. And then you go over it and you come back up Jacob's Ladder, which is the stones at the back, the steps at the back. It's a nightmare. And I did a walk back. I've done a couple of long walks as well. And when it gets dark, circadian rhythms come in, and you just want to go to sleep. So I understand where all that emotion comes from, because you start just like questioning it and all that. And I was like, I didn't do the fan dance on my own, but I did a 70 odd mile walk and a 100-mile walk on my own. And it's really hard in the dark. Mm-hmm. And what gets me with this is they're working together and they're all struggling together, and it's easier to get through as a team. However, they're just the bit up and down is on their own. It's the bit in between when they're not doing it is that bit, isn't it? And I find that amazing. And this is what I try and get across to people when I'm and like what hopefully the film does as well is like this sort of struggle is there's a reward on the other side of it. You know, you've got to go, you've kind of got to go through it and feel it. And then you feel what it's like on the other side. And those guys, I haven't seen the film, obviously, but like I can kind of understand what you're talking about, because once you've done it, everything's all right, like a couple of days later. So it's like, well, okay, if I can do that, what else can I do? So, I mean, what did the guys think of that?
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing to kind of capture as well. So we did the interviews after the event as well. So they basically just talk through what happened. So if there were any gaps in the footage that I had, we can cover it. And when it got to the end of those interviews, it was just like asking, so like, do you feel any different? Like what's changed? And it's a case of them just being like, I can't believe I've done it. I feel like they all were, I can't wait to do the next one as well. That's like they've all done, they're all planning other things. Like I was talking to Joe on Sunday. He's doing a marathon in Norway in the summer, and Travis just this weekend gone, the day before the screening, he ran the length of Jersey. And so they're just like, that was the first endurance event that Travis has ever done, and then he's already like come back, and I think he's done another 24-hour race, and he's run the length of Jersey. It's like he's got the bug for it now.
Yeah.
And I think I saw something, because I thought after the event, I followed all the three guys, and I've been in touch, or I messaged Travis, and I think I'm going to catch up with him for a coffee and stuff, because he's fairly local. Is he fairly local to Chelmsford, Travis? I think.
Yeah, all three are.
Yeah. So I know he's like he's a trainer and stuff, isn't he, as well? And I kind of sort of reached out to him and said, I would have to catch up for, meet up for a coffee. But it's fantastic what they did. And like I say, the main thing I think is that that's what I'm going to say, because I saw something on one of their Instagrams the other day where they're doing this, because I think Ted mentions like David Goggins, doesn't he? Like he read his book. And then I don't know if they're going to do it together, or they're just kind of, but there's the David Goggins kind of challenge, which is the 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours.
48 hours, yeah.
48 hours, isn't it? Because they're going to do that as well, aren't they? I think soon. I saw.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, they. So there is a clip of. So when Ted's got his kind of backstory, there's B-roll of him doing that challenge last year as well. Yeah, and I was with him for that, and he was broken. Like he says, like that's the hardest thing that he's ever done. He said, I don't know if I think he said in the video that they posted, but he was hallucinating like in the middle of the night, and his mum like kind of came around the corner, and it scared the life out of him.
Yeah,
I've had that. There was a walk, the 100-miler I was doing was around the same loop over and over again. It was like a 6 and a bit mile loop that I was doing 17 times. And when it gets dark, this is what's funny when who haven't I pissed off recently? People who believe in ghosts, right? Let's go there.
No, the French.
But you know, yeah, but you know how when people see ghosts, it's always like 2:00 in the morning, you're half asleep and all that sort of stuff, right? When it got dark, I'd be walking along and I'd be like, there's a bunch of people up here. What am I going to do if they're like violent and stuff like that? Because like your head's in a different place because you're tired and you haven't slept for nearly 24 hours and all of that. Get there and it's a couple of branches hanging off a tree or something like that. And it was just, honestly, I had that absolutely everywhere, and it's bonkers. Because obviously, well, like this is one of the things when you get tired and when people get like so for the mental health side of it, when people have got kind of issues with that, that's when you get tired because you can't cope with it, you can't like think straight and all of that, and then you can't sleep, and then it's like a constant battle, isn't it? And it's these sorts of things then start to come into your head of not being able to cope with stuff. But if you can cope with it, this is why I asked that question earlier. I was like, if you can do that, what can you do next? Because if you can cope with that, and you can cope with that mentally, or you realize that when these things show up, they're not really real. You're just making them up in your head because because you're tired or you're using the resource that you have. I just find that brilliant because it's like, well, if you can prove you can do that, then you can do anything.
That's kind of the point of the film. Is if I can do this, what else can I do? And it's drawing that link between physical activity and mental resilience. Like if you're going through a hard time, you know that you've been up and down a mountain however many times for 24 hours, you go, right, if I've done this, I can do this.
Yep. So and you've always got it there as well to look back on. It's really hard to look back on something that you've done mentally, sort of internally, because that's kind of, there's a record of it there. But if you've done like a physical challenge, it's almost tangible, isn't it? I would say, and you can look back on it and go, I remember doing that. And there might be pictures or a film, as opposed to a mental record of it, which gets dulled. And you can actually take away the significance of that and go, oh, that wasn't a thing, getting over an emotional trauma and all that sort of stuff. 20 years down the line, you can then say, nah, it wasn't that much. And it's like, well, actually, do you remember being in it at the time? And you might not remember the pain and the suffering of that. But then you go, do you remember walking up Snowdon, however many times it was? And you'd be like, yeah, my legs were killing. I can't believe I did that. I got cramp. I was crying on the way. And then all of a sudden, you bring that physical experience back. And then I think that can then fire up all the other things that you've come over in your life, So, no, I love that. That's brilliant.
I mean, I just wonder whether or not there's a lot of challenges, like physical challenges, there's a finite nature to them, isn't there? In the sense that they will end, hopefully they end in success, but even if failures at the end, you're not going to be doing it forever. And one of the things many people have experienced, we've all had some kind of mental health episode, no doubt, severe, everything from low level to something more severe is that sometimes it feels like it's never going to stop, that it's ever present, and having these kind of events. And I suppose it's a way of rehearsing what a solution could be to very intense feelings, very intense situations. And there's something that kind of galvanizes the spirit, isn't there? I mean, where were the guys in terms of their outlook on the world before? I mean, obviously, there's a camaraderie to it. But
so,
what are they experiencing?
So I think they were all in relatively good kind of mental health places at the time of the event, as far as I know. But like they talk about how fitness in the last few years has been a big thing for them to overcome mental health. Not like a distinction between like mental health and then mental illness probably needs to be made. Like there's obviously mental illness where you might want to have like treatment and whatnot, and then there's mental health which everyone can have a varying degree of good or bad. So I think that they had been in sort of tough times. Ted talks about being quite inactive growing up and sort of finishing school. And this is kind of how I felt as well. Like when I finished school, like I stopped like playing sport like every single day, and then suddenly I'm working, or I'm at uni, and like all of those kind of, all of my structure that I had my activity in was gone. And that's when kind of the anxiety starts to creep in, you start to lose confidence. And it was through doing a marathon and training for a marathon that Ted built himself up again, to, you know, work on his anxiety and work on his confidence. And then similarly with Travis, he had issues with, basically Travis is like one of the smallest people that I know, and he's been small since the first time that I saw him. Like he, and that's something that he's kind of battled with, like the backlash of being the smallest person in the year group, and then still trying to be successful in a sport where you're going up against people who are like, you know, 1.5 times your size, and you're just not getting picked even though you're trying your hardest. And so he has this thing in him where he's been rejected so much that he wants to prove himself. But I think through the process of the film and through his boxing, so he's an amateur boxer, I think especially through his boxing, he's kind of worked out that it's more about proving to myself that I can do whatever I put my mind to, rather than trying to please and impress or prove people wrong from growing up, you know. And then, yeah, with Joe's, it was more to do with kind of just proving that, you know, I can do anything that I put my mind to. And obviously he was running for his granddad. And as well, he talks about, what does he talk about? He talks about issues with kind of his portrayal of himself. So like he feels like he's putting on a positive persona when he's talking to people. Like every time I've met Joe, like I couldn't tell if he was having a good or a bad day. And he says that's just the way that everyone sees him. Like he's always kind of putting on a face, putting on a show. And he says that can be quite a toxic thing, because he's never, like, people don't know kind of to support him when he needs support, and he just kind of deals with things and internalizes things. But he uses sport as, he's a semi-professional referee and he plays football as well, and he uses sport as an outlet to let like his emotions out. But yeah, that's stuff that they talk about in the film as well.
That's massive, because what you just said there about, like, you know, you can never really tell what he's thinking. That's very common, because people think they can't. I mean, it's getting more out there, isn't it, that people can talk about stuff, but some people still don't want to. They're like, well, not me, because I'm not important, or whatever it means. Because I've done that myself. Mm-hmm. So I've got like a decent-ish sort of understanding of this just from my own experience of it. But yeah, that whole thing about wearing a mask, and you can't tell whether the person's having a good day or not, because they always put this like bravish front on. But then the problem with that is, then when you are struggling, nobody knows and nobody's there to help until you really, really, really need it. And that's you know, I mean, that kind of comes with age and experience and stuff like that, I think. But it's good to have that kind of awareness at a younger age as well. I think, like if you're in your 20s and stuff like that, it's really good to have that awareness, because then you can do something about it then as well. And I wrote down something here, because I didn't know what to call it, but and we speak about this a lot, and we speak about it within training, but it's within anything that you're doing, mentally, physically, anything. From what Paul was saying about like the endurance of something that you're struggling with, that there is no end to, or you don't see that there's an end, because there's always an end, is what you can recover from is the main thing. And if you can increase what you can recover from, then you can face up to more stuff, can't you? So whether it's physical or mental. So like these guys, you know, and like you said, at the end of this, they've done a relay up a mountain, and then they're like, oh, well, if I can do that, what can I do next? Because they've recovered from that and they're obviously fine. If it broke them, then they'll be like, right, well, you know, I'm not going to go and try and do something more than that. But if they're like, well, if I can get over that, what can I get over next? And I find that absolutely fascinating, because you can grow that all the time. especially in well, it's basically resilience, isn't it? What you can, like things that you can overcome. And I think for the listener, say getting into training, and like maybe he's looking at this and going, that's a great thing to do or whatever. It's like, great, but you can't just like some people can just step up and do it. But if you're going to do it, you've got to like build up towards it, haven't you? And you've got to start to be able to recover from more things physically and mentally. And then the more things you can recover from, the more things you can take on. So rather than trying to cram everything into your life, it's like take a load of stuff out, focus on the thing, get over that, then focus on the next thing and the next thing. And then all of a sudden you're running up and down a mountain, aren't you? So how did those guys do it in between then? So there is a question out of that, I suppose. Like when one of them's doing the lap or the ascent and descent, what were the other two doing?
So there was a system, and the system kind of broke down throughout the races. I'm sure you can imagine, but the important thing was that they don't just stop moving; they need to keep moving. And we were fortunate that the respite area, where like all of our tents were and everything, was right next to a lake in Llanberis. So they were doing some like almost cold water therapy, getting in the cold water to try and help some muscle recovery. And there was a massage gun, and not much more you can do really, but and then just getting your calories in before the next run. And then just trying not to sit still for too long. But then further into the race, it was right, I need to sleep. And I can't keep my legs moving while I'm sleeping. So yeah,
I was going to say there was like they're nearby. I saw that because they kind of converted the local a football pitch, didn't they, or a football ground to like the sort of camping area, if you like, and you're allowed to tent set up. So did they actually? I know. So if you were going sort of relaying three, one after the other, and it was taking kind of say 2.5 hours. In theory, you could have 4 or 5 hours in between each lap, yourself. Did anyone did they actually manage to get some sleep and things, like a couple of hours here and there sort of later on? Or
they did. I don't think they slept well, but I remember Travis saying that he fell asleep for a good amount of like one of the legs, and it was when the person before you's at the summit, that's when you need to start getting ready, because you've got like maybe half hour to get ready, half hour, 40 minutes before they'll be at the bottom in theory. And I remember Travis saying that he was fast asleep, like completely knocked out, and then just heard Joe's at the top. He just like bolted up in bed, like, oh, we've got to run. Because the first lap we did as well, like it'd taken Ted like an hour and 20 to get up to the summit, and we're like, right, we've probably got at least an hour before he's going to be to the bottom again, and he did it in like 40 minutes. So we were late to the first changeover, so that was on our minds for like the whole of the rest of the race. So they did sleep, but I don't think they slept well.
Maybe like an hour or 2 hours.
That's it. They've got all that adrenaline, haven't they? So
and it was what was what was really good as well was you see the first leg that all three of them do. They're really positive and they're really buzzing and they're like really excited and it feels great and everyone's like on a high. And then as you get further through the kind of the 24 hours, you just you can just see and sense and hear that it just becomes like you say, trudgery, and like they're all aching and they've got cramps and it's like they don't know if they can go on and all the rest of it. It's really good to see that journey,
Yeah, there was a lot less to film as we went on as well, because everything just slowed down. Like when editing the film, I felt like everything leading up to the event and the first like 3 legs felt like, it took me ages to get through. But then the last sort of 6 legs, I kind of breezed through the editing of that sequence, because they weren't doing much.
Especially like you say, when they're going up and down in the dark and there's no one around, was there? It's like it was really not a lot going on. With the can we just ask about the charity, Ollie, the Sport in Mind that you've mentioned? I know at the start of the film there was kind of like a trailer. You put a few trailers together, didn't you, at the start of the film? So how did Sport in Mind did the three guys get in touch with the charity, or did you get in touch with the charity, or how was that kind of link formed, and what does Sport in Mind kind of do as a charity?
So Sport in Mind, it was more like, so we've not really been like in partnership with them, so to speak. It's all just been in aid of Sport in Mind. And I think it was just a case of Ted and Travis choosing a charity at the start, and then it kind of relating to kind of doing the race. What they chose a charity that related to why they wanted to do the race, essentially. And then those themes kind of built up into the film. And so it made sense to support the charity with the film. So like where this is like a micro budget film, it's independent film. We're not planning on making like loads of money. We're not planning on selling it to like a Netflix or something like that. But we like to support it by doing like these screenings. And I think we're going to look to do like a 24-hour screening or some kind of event to raise even more money through the film for Sport in Mind. But yeah, it was just where the links of the charity just worked really well with what the film is. And so the charity, they help people with mental health problems through, and they arrange like physical activity sessions and help that way. They do loads and loads of stuff. I'm not the best kind of spokesperson for the charity.
No, it looked really good. The trailer that you showed, and the kind of community sessions that people can go along to and just join in with exercise classes and things if they feel like they need to, and it's to meet, the social element as well, isn't it? And the getting out and meeting people and doing the activity. Yeah,
that's it. They're a really fastly growing charity, and they're based in Reading, and I think they're starting to come into Essex now, and they're just really they're in the last year they've blown up massively, and they're just putting on more and more sessions all over the country.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. No, and I don't know. I think I could see the because it's really well made and it's beautiful to look at as well. The film, I could see that on like on Netflix or on Amazon or one of those things, because we had Donna Moore on before, who's like, she's a 3 times world's strongest woman, and she's from where's she's from up north, isn't she, Pete?
Than's for that.
Sorry, I asked.
She's from I can't remember. Let's ask Peter and put it on him because he's northern.
No, but you know where she was.
I can't remember.
Where
it's just from like Middlesbrough area, kind of way somewhere.
Yeah,
somewhere around there.
But I know she lived up in Scotland, and she's kind of. But she had a documentary.
I might be wrong. I might be wrong about that. So sorry.
Yeah,
sorry,
no, Donna. But they had a documentary with her called Don Strong, and it was all about kind of her as a strong woman. And that was kind of like, it seems like quite a small budget kind of documentary, if you like, which was on, I think I ended up paying a couple of, £3.50 or something to watch it on Apple TV. It was on Apple TV. You can get it on Amazon and all that sort of thing. So yeah, there might be, I think it'd be really good. I could see people watching it, and
I think you can list a film on like an Amazon, but it's whether we wanted to kind of go down that route, or which is where you kind of hand everything over to Amazon. They say, right, this is ours now. We're going to make this on Prime, and people can pay, and you'll get a little bit of money here and there. Or we could do it through just by putting it up on YouTube, and it might get more people to view it, because I think it is a case of spreading the message a bit more than it is about kind of making money from it. Well, it's not about making money from the film at all. So we've not really decided where it's going to end up, but it's nice of you to say that it could end up on one of those platforms.
Yeah, because that's where you'd kind of, I suppose, you've got the potential for the reach, haven't you, on those platforms? You know what I mean? That's the thing, isn't it? It's kind of like weighing up what's best for it going forwards. Yeah, but what we'll do is when we kind of wrap up and that, we'll kind of, I know we spoke beforehand, and you don't really, at the moment, there's not, like you say, a clear path as to where people will be able to watch the movie going forwards. But yeah, do you want to kind of, I know you mentioned you sort of spoke to us before we came on air, but what's the kind of what's the next step for the film? You've had these 2 showings at the kind of the Odeon here, and it's been really well received. But what are you doing? What's the next stage
Yeah, absolutely.
try and get out
So
there?
the next stage is we've entered into with the part of the money from the last screening that we did. We entered into 13 film festivals, and we hear back from 5 this month. And we heard back from one yesterday and were successful. So we've just been accepted into our first film festival, which is a really great start. And basically the plan is to get as many kind of accreditations for the film by doing the festivals. And as well, generally these festivals have good like networking opportunities. So it's kind of as well to learn what the best option is. Like I know how to make a film, but I don't know how to sell a film. But so yeah, the plan is we're going to do all of these festivals, and we're looking to release it in July, sort of around the time of the next Snowdon 24 for 2023. So yeah, that's the plan.
Well, you never know if there's anyone listening who can help out with all of that. Then because like you say, you know how to make one, but you don't know how to get it out there. If someone does, then we can put you in touch.
Absolutely.
I'm not promising anything, but you never know who's listening. That's the thing.
And I could see actually the Snowdon 24, that because the film is, like I say, watching it was almost, I know it wasn't made to be, but it made that event and the area and the whole, it really was, it was a great advert, if you like, for that event as well, and for the area and for everything that went on. So, if people watch that, I can see that quite a few people would think, oh wow, that looks amazing, I'd love to give that a go or whatever.
There's loads of stuff. It's an amazing place. I did it was with a company called Adventurous You in 2019, and it was the August bank holiday weekend, and I did the 15 the 15 peaks in Snowdon. There's 15 peaks over 3,000 feet, so you do them all. You can do them all in a day, but I wanted to enjoy it. So we did it all over a long weekend, and it was amazing. It finishes on Snowdon, and we went over. You had the option to go over Crib Goch. Do you know that in Snowdon?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we went over Crib Goch, which is like the knife edge. It's a ridge, and it's pretty sketchy. And you had the option to go over that or not. But once you decide whether you're going to go over, you've got to go, because like once you're up there, you can't get back down. So you've got to do it. But it was a glorious sunny day and everything, so it was fantastic. But yeah, I could recommend that to anybody as well, because it was just amazing, the views and everything. And we've had Matt Shaw on here, haven't we, who goes over to Snowdon a lot, over to Snowdonia and stuff like that. And there's just like honestly, the mountains around there are amazing. It's such a nice area. Yeah,
we do like every year we do like a walking weekend with the gym, and we the first one we did Snowdon, and that was beautiful, and we done Brecon Beacons, we've been to the Cotswolds and all different, and just getting out in the fresh air and walking and with a group of people and talking the whole way around is it's just
the Malverns is nice as well. I was there a couple of weeks ago and it's lush. So there you go.
Where's that?
The Malverns, it's near Worcester.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't. We're going somewhere in June this year. I think it's more like is it the Chilterns or something like that?
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where it is. I don't really organise it, but I'll go along. I'll set my sat nav and go and have a walk. No, that'll be fantastic. No. Oh, that's great. That's really good. So Olly, if people want to, like you say, we haven't got any cast iron kind of go here and watch the movie, because as you've explained, you've entered it into all these festivals and we don't really know the route whereby people will access it yet. But what's the best way for people who may have listened to this today, who are interested in, what you've done, and maybe interested in what you've done and watching this movie this film at some stage in the future, and also people who maybe want to keep a look at what you're doing going forward, because I take it, well, before we do that, what are the plans for you? Are you planning to do more kind of documentaries, more films? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in talks at the moment with a women's football team about making a documentary about them. I can't go into like loads of detail about it, but essentially they're going for promotion, and if they get the promotion, there's a lot at stake if they don't get the promotion, basically. But yeah, that's going to be all about women's football and what it's like being in a team, bit of sport and mental health as well. So yeah, so similar sort of themes to what this film is, but through a little bit of a different, from a little bit of a different angle.
Excellent. And that's something that would that be something you'd be filming? Is it because obviously we're coming sort of, I suppose, towards the end of this football season this year? Would this be next year? Would it next sort of football season?
No, so this is going to be so it's still kind of early, well, not early talks, but I don't want to jinx it or anything. It looks like it's going to be following for the rest of the season, because they've had a real like kind of up and down story as well. So we're going to look back at the season so far, and then follow the last few games as it starts to get really tense as to whether or not they're going to do what they need to do. But excellent. It's a lot about the future of women's football as well, and the future of women's football in Chelmsford. So.
Oh wow! Okay, no, that sounds good. That sounds excellent. So yeah, how do people keep an eye on what's going to happen with this film then?
Absolutely. So if you want to follow me, I'm at Oliver James Creative on Instagram and on Facebook. And then for the film, there's an Instagram page for the film, which is at @thesummitmentality_film. And as well, there's a web page which will be updated with kind of a bit more stuff. At the moment, it's all of the screening information from the last day, but that's on my website. That's oliverjamescreative.com/thesummitmentality. And as well, if you kind of like what I've said about all of like Ted, Travis and Joe and all of their story, they're at Summit Mentality on Instagram, and you can give them a follow and keep up to date with what they're doing with their kind of future challenges.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, that's really, really good. And I think that even if people watch, I know you, the trailer that you put together, it's only like a minute or something, the trailer, but it's really, really good. I really like the trailer's great as well, so people can probably find that on the web. I know it's on YouTube and stuff at the moment, isn't it? If someone types in like the Summit Mentality or the Summit Mentality film. Yeah,
sure. It's on the YouTube page, and it'll be on the website. And it's on the Instagram as well, so you'll find it.
Yeah, no, the trailer's fantastic. Yeah, and like I say, it's a really, it's lovely to look at as well. Even without the story and without all the interviews and everything else, just the scenery and the way you've shot it is fantastic. So yeah, no, it's great. So yeah, congratulations on the initial 2 screenings, and I hope this goes out to lots of people and increases the interest, and I hope you get some good results from the film festivals you're entering into, and it would be really interesting to see how things progress going forward. So thanks so much for coming on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me. Nice chatting with you
all. Pete, before we wrap up, or while we wrap up, any final thoughts before we close?
Yeah, no, I'm just interested to see where this goes. It is really interesting to see, somebody doing something that you just love doing. You're just doing it because you love doing it, but you don't know what you're going to do with it. It's fantastic. I love that, because it's just putting your faith in the process, and then, and finding people who want to tell a story, who aren't like necessarily famous and all of this sort of stuff. Just not like, everyday people who are just like, do you know what I'm going to do this. Or like a football team or whatever. So I love it. It's like, I just love it. I've started following everything you've just said, by the way. So I'm going to be watching where it all goes. I love it. I think it's great. So excellent. Good luck to you. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Paul Bassett, anything as we start to close now?
I mean, creating a film is such a big undertaking, isn't it? You've got to sort through so much stuff. You're kind of provided with just an open canvas of just lots of things. I mean, being able to find the narrative, being able to find sometimes the narrative presents itself really obviously. Other times you have to search for it, and I suppose that's part of the process. It's quite an exciting one. It's like, what are you going to discover by the end of looking through the footage? You never know. You can look at tons and tons of footage which you think is dead. There's nothing there, and all of a sudden something comes out of it that suddenly makes the whole thing start to come together, and it's such an interesting process. So I think and just exploring the kind of the thoughts, the feelings, and the kind of everyday struggles of people is I think there's so many stories that have yet to be uncovered, and it's great when someone like such as yourself has that inquiring mind is willing to listen. Makes a big difference. So thanks for coming on.
Ollie, have you watched The Fabelmans at all?
I have, yeah.
You have,
I went to see it last week, yeah.
Yeah, did you like it?
Oh yeah, it was great. It was really good. I mean, for me, especially as like having grown up or been through a lot of those stages that you see him go through as a child. Yeah, it's quite an emotional film to watch.
Yeah, we watched it on Tuesday, and for those who don't know, it's the latest Steven Spielberg film, and it's kind of autobiographical, really. It's about him and growing up and how he got into film and his family and all the rest of it. And the bit at the end where he meets John Ford, the director, and then he sort of says, and he just he expects like some amazing, I don't know, like epiphany, and he just says, like, if the horizon's at the bottom of the shot, it's interesting. If the horizon's at the top of the shot, it's interesting. If the horizon's in the middle, it's boring. Now fuck off and get out of my office. That was so good. It was really, really good. So yeah, that was a great film. And I thought it was you as a filmmaker seeing that as he was growing up was yeah.
That scene is brilliant as well, because that's David Lynch who plays that's really good scene. And then the way they end the film as well, where they like tilt up to the horizon on the bottom.
Yeah, they change. Yeah, it's good. I highly recommend that. It's a nice film to watch. Cool. Thank you so much, Ollie, for joining us. That was really interesting. And like I say, I highly recommend keeping an eye on the Summit Mentality, and when it's available to watch in whatever format. I mean, I'm sure we'll kind of share it on our social media and all the rest of it when we know what's going on with it going forward, because I'd highly recommend watching it. So thank you very much, all of you, for listening or watching. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening or watching on a platform that allows you to do so. If you'd like to join the Health Oddity Facebook group, just go into Facebook under groups and search Health Oddity, and we will let you in. We will be back next week. I will be away again snowboarding, but I'm going to try and join. Look at Pete's rolling his eyes. Sorry. I will try and join you from France, and we will see what the Wi-Fi is like. And I'm not sure if we've got a guest lined up next week or not. I know we have the week after when I get back. You
don't give a shit, do you? Because you're off snowboarding. You're just like, yeah, whatever, do whatever you like. I'm off. See you later.
Well, see if Ollie wants to come, do some filming, do some snowboarding. Right, dear me. Okay, we will see you next week for episode 134. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.